Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Friday, November 6, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast, Election, Jobs, and Money. Oh my. Didn't do a podcast yesterday evening. My apologies. So I want to make sure that we go through our traditional Thursday podcast and discussion where we go through initial jobless claims, continuing claims, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, M2 money stock. The Federal Reserve had their FOMC meeting conclusion on Wednesday and had some remarks. So definitely want to talk about that with their decision. Obviously keeping rates low, promising to do whatever it takes. They're going to continue. They're not going to stop anytime soon here. Obviously the election, the circus that continues. I'm sure it's keeping most of you entertained. And then we're going to get to some market performance as well. But first, we'll cover some of the election noise because that's really front and center here. We still do not have a president-elect. It appears that this is probably going to take at least another day, maybe a couple. However, votes continue to trickle on in from the various battleground states that are remaining. I just want to throw this out there, though, because I actually was thinking about this the other day. This, of course, would be on the assumption that President Trump loses, which may not be the case. He can still very well pull this out. He can still pull that royal flush, but that's what he's going to need. But it's still in the cards. Joe Biden might be holding four of a kind, but a royal flush will beat it, and the president still has a chance there. But again, for the sake of argument, just for the sake of making the assumption that if President Trump should lose re-election, is it a possibility that Donald Trump may be more powerful as a civilian as opposed to being the president again? He has a very, very, very loyal base of supporters. He was able to do one hell of a job campaigning to turn out the vote. If it wasn't for Joe Biden getting more votes right now, Donald Trump would have been a president who received more votes than anybody, at least from the popular vote standpoint. And we're going to get to some of those numbers here shortly. But could the president prove to be more powerful outside of the Oval Office than what he is inside of it? Because really, as the president, you can only do so much, right? Checks and balances. A little thing called the Constitution, you know? What would he potentially do outside? What type of movement would he continue to lead? Or would he just go quietly back to Mar-a-Lago and play golf? I don't think that's going to be the case. Maybe he would do that temporarily, take a little vacation. But if he loses, I don't think that's going to be the end of Donald Trump. Not by a long shot. So what type of movement could he lead? Could he convince his supporters to march on Washington, to get certain things done that way, to go into their respective representatives' offices and not to leave until something gets done? Or worst case scenario, potentially, because, Trump country, maybe he actually thinks, maybe there could be Trump country, and lead some sort of secession movement. I hope that doesn't happen. That would be worst case scenario, but the country is extremely divided. And there's a lot of dry tinder and kindling out there. It's not going to take much to make things potentially worse. I hope that doesn't happen again. That would be a worst case scenario. But the bulk of the question, the main point of this hypothetical is, would Donald Trump be more powerful outside of the Oval Office as opposed to inside? Something to think about. Some market performance. Dollar index. The dollar posts its biggest weekly loss in 8 months. Okay? Trading at 92.3, again, the dollar index. This is a weekly decline of 1.9%, which is the biggest decline since back in March. A lot of volatility. The dollar was strengthening again. Earlier this week, we were trading at a 94 handle, and we said, well, is it going to continue? Is it going to spot 16? It's now at one spot 18, almost one spot 19. British pound was below 130. Now it's one spot 31. And you can just go down the list amongst the major currency pairs with respect to the U.S. dollar. Same thing. So it's something to continue to monitor. Dow Jones Industrial Average in conjunction with the S&P were both down today. The Dow Jones gave back about 0.25%, and the S&P was relatively flat, but still somewhat in the red. NASDAQ 100 was up 0.25%. Of course, this is on the back of a monster rally over the past few days, so giving back a little bit is not a surprise at all. But it's interesting to note, and of course, those of you who have been with me know that I don't play the day-to-day BS narratives with respect to the stock market or anything like that. We obviously go through what's taking place, but that's not my game. But it's interesting because the president, Donald Trump, has been saying for quite a while, this is something he says repeatedly on the campaign, is that if Joe Biden should win, the stock market is going to tank. Well, for the past couple of days, it has been looking more and more likely, not with certainty, but more and more likely, that Joe Biden is going to become president-elect, and yet the markets were rallying. So this has really had nothing to do with it. It's the Federal Reserve. It's the funny money. It's the ECB, the Bank of Japan. It's all this nonsense that's going on around the world. This audience understands this, at least I hope. I mean, I talk about this here every day, for God's sake. I hope it's sinking in by now. The dots couldn't be easier to connect. But nonetheless, this is just simply the president's argument. So I'm just simply calling this out. Because if that was a true statement, and it very well may prove to be true over time, but that would be because the market is having its way with all of this nonsense. And I am expecting that day to happen. Don't have a crystal ball, can't tell you when. And I'm hoping for it too, to be honest with you, because at least if the market pulls this down and brings some gravity back into the system, that means there's still hope for a true and honest recovery. That means all bets are off the table. There's still a chance that we can still salvage some sort in some form of a market economy. Because if these idiots, these politicians and central bankers around the world, if they have somehow killed a true market economy, even the last slice of it, then we're cooked. We're cooked. This is a complete central command control economy. And that is backed again today. WTI giving back 4.25%, trading at $37.14 a barrel. Brent giving back 3.1%, $39.66 a barrel. Natural gas giving back almost 2%, back below $3 at $2.89. Gold and silver both had another good day. Gold is at $1,950 an ounce. Silver is up at $25.59. Looking good on the charts. This could be the start of another run-up potentially, especially off of the backs of what central banks have been saying over the past couple of days, what Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, said the other day as well. They're going to do more. They're going to continue to expand the balance sheet, and we're going to get to that here shortly. They're going to do what it takes. They're going to continue to push for more fiscal spending. Of course, they call it stimulus. It's not stimulus. We don't have the money, so this is actually going to be a net negative. It might look like it's going to boost something in the short term, but there is no free lunch. So at what expense? Okay? That's something to keep on the back of your mind. Now, during the press conference with Jay Powell, some of the reporters were actually starting to ask, finally, some tougher questions. Now, of course, they're not in person. They're via Zoom or whatever. It's virtual. So not really any type of aggression or any type of, not too many follow-ups. And, of course, Jay Powell is going to dance around any question he doesn't want to directly answer anyway. But at least we're starting to hear the questions. Is the Federal Reserve out of ammunition? What else can you do? What else do you have in your toolbox? If Congress doesn't pass more fiscal spending, more fiscal measures, will you in the Federal Reserve step in to fill that void? And if so, will it pack the punch that you're looking for? Is the Federal Reserve finding itself trapped? Finally, they start asking these questions. Are we in the midst of a liquidity trap? Which basically means you can't take away the punch bowl, because the crackheads need their crack. So you can't take it away. You're just going to have to continuously prop everything up. And of course, the chairman said, no, that's nonsense. We don't do that. We got plenty of tools in the toolkit. And once everything gets back to quote unquote normal, whatever the hell that means, we're going to take all these tools that we've put out, all of the emergency facilities, and we're going to put them back in our drawer and we're going to tuck them away. Oh, we've heard this story before, ladies and gentlemen, and they don't quite do it, do they? And of course, the answer is no. They continue to play these games. They continue to bail out some of the largest corporations around the world. Another topic that was brought up, and I'm glad that it was, and it has been brought up before, but it's with respect to the Main Street lending facility trying to help out small businesses. And what was it? Initially, it was somewhere around $1 million per loan. Well, a lot of small businesses don't need that much money. They're not going to qualify for it. And of course, the money wasn't handed out either. And then I guess some genius at the Federal Reserve said, well, that might be too much money. How about $250,000? And then they lowered it down and they said, okay, that's the minimum, $250,000. And still, a lot of small businesses didn't take advantage of it. Now, perhaps they were trying to, but the banks weren't giving it out. And still, furthermore, they lowered it again to $100,000. And still, there's not a lot of takers. And finally, a little bit of honesty, a little bit directly, again, right in front of us, pay attention. Well, why weren't these loans being out there? I mean, you're trying to help these people, these businesses, right? I mean, that's the goal. That's what they tell us. So why isn't this money flushing out of the system, into the system, out of the banks and into the system, into these small businesses to keep them alive? Right? This pandemic was not their fault. That's what we're told. That's why we bail out Boeing. That's why we bail out the airline industry and so many others, because it wasn't their fault. Well, it wasn't small businesses' fault either. So why aren't they getting the dough? Oh, because the banks aren't making enough money. The fee structure isn't to their liking. And then furthermore, they're concerned that they're going to lose money, that these small businesses won't be able to pay it back because they're already over-levered to begin with. The problem to begin with before COVID-19. You get it? This is the economy of the living dead. So understand this. These are the dots. Connect them. Paint the picture. We have an economic quagmire here. We are in the midst of the Greatest Depression. The Nobody Cares Act gets passed. On Wednesday, the last podcast that I did, at the end of that podcast, I reread some of my letter that I sent to my congressmen and senators on the Capitol News website, thecapitalnews.com. Representation in recourse. Many of you have read it, and I thank you for that. Those of you who haven't, please do so. Pointing out all of the things that were going to be coming down the pike. And one, after the next, after the next, after the next, they're doing. And in fact, we're bailing them out. The banks. And of course, other industries, but I want to focus on the banks here. So we're giving them all this money that we don't have. We're just printing it out of thin air, giving it to them. They create this Main Street lending facility, an emergency facility, to help out smaller businesses. It has to be conducted through the banks, and the banks don't want to do it. The Federal Reserve, if the Federal Reserve is a regulator of the banks, then the Federal Reserve can tell these banks what to do. And because this money was appropriated from Congress, meaning the people, Congress has the ability to tell these banks what to do with the money. But they don't. But they don't. You don't even hear the liberals off of this one. Corporations are crazy, Bernie and Pocahontas on this. Shouldn't they be all over this? Shouldn't we hear them every day complaining about this? You don't hear it from any of them. What about your free market capitalistic Republicans? Where are they? More bailouts? No, you can't do this. Or at least if we're going to give money to Apple and buy their corporate debt, well, why can't we give loans to small businesses? You don't hear any of this. You hear none of it. And you're not going to continue to hear any of it because they don't want to talk about it. But it's going on right in front of you. And if you listen, they tell you what's going on, but most people aren't paying attention. Guess it'd be too easy to pay attention. Remember the list we went through on Wednesday? The structural issues that nobody wants to talk about? The income tax, Federal Reserve, Patriot Act, the Snowden files, the FinCEN files, two-tier justice system, military-industrial complex, too much power within the halls of our government, infrastructure or educational system. List goes on and on. Nothing's being addressed, and it's not going to be. Just some things to keep on the top of your mind. Uncle Sam's 10-year Treasury junk note yielding 0.82%. So back with an 8 handle, some selling in the bond market, the Treasury market, lifting those yields, at least temporarily. We will continue to monitor this closely. Now to, I guess, some of the circus, a little bit more of the math here. Joe Biden at 253 electoral college votes. President Trump at 214 electoral college votes. When it comes to the popular vote as it stands this evening, 74.4 million votes for Joe Biden, rounding up slightly. Again, 74.4 million. Donald Trump at 70.2 million votes. Outstanding. It's going to be a huge turnout. It already is a huge turnout, and there are several 100,000 votes really to be added up across the country because everybody doesn't have 100% of the vote all counted. And, of course, there's still the certified process that has to take place, which will take a little bit longer across the board. Looks like the state of Georgia is going to be going to a recount, just automatic because of how tight the race is there now. Joe Biden has actually taken the lead by some 4,000 votes. North Carolina is still going to take probably until next week, they've already announced, even though that looks like it's probably most likely going to end up in the Trump column. I think that's pretty certain, but anything can happen. Arizona continuing to count. I think there will be a little more, maybe another batch or two that comes across the wires this evening, but Joe Biden remains ahead in that contest in the state of Arizona by about 29 to 30,000 votes. Nevada, still going to have to wait a little bit longer there. The state that counts chips and money can't count ballots. So we're going to have to continue to wait in Nevada as well. But nonetheless, Joe Biden is still leading in that contest, up about 22,000 votes. And then to the Keystone State, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Despite President Trump's massive lead from in-person voting on Election Day, being some 600,000 vote lead, has now, of course, dwindled, and now the president is behind Joe Biden. Joe Biden is now the leader in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, up about 28,000 votes. I do believe there might be a couple more that trickle through. I think Allegheny County, which is around Pittsburgh, is closing up shop for the evening, so they'll be back tomorrow. But there might still be some more that trickle in overnight. Now, of course, if Joe Biden should win Pennsylvania, 20 electoral college votes, that's going to be it. You need 270. That would give him 273. Of course, if he should win Arizona and Nevada, that's going to give him 270 on the button. He wouldn't need Pennsylvania, North Carolina, or Georgia. So that's why Joe Biden is currently holding 4 of a kind, very strong hand, still has a handful of outlets and avenues to get to that 270 figure, but Donald Trump is not out of it. He can still pull a royal flush, but it's going to be quite astonishing if that happens. But this is the year 2020. Anything can most definitely happen. But just remain calm on all of this, please. Don't go down the rabbit hole in conspiracy theories and this is fraud, this is corruption, this is being stolen. Do not do that, because especially obviously to those who are Trump supporters and want to see him win, that's fine. If that's the clown you want behind the Resolute desk, that's your business. But understand, that's what you're getting. You either want the blue-faced clown behind the desk or the red-faced clown behind the desk, because they're not talking about the structural issues. So this is just a personality contest in which clown you want to laugh at. That's all it comes down to. Again, a first world banana republic. It's all it is. Don't forget it. Because as you're distracted, paying attention to the circus, they're running away with all the loot. Billions and trillions of dollars, which are yours, by the way. Okay? Just so you understand this. I'm going to again say it, though. Just please remain calm. Let these people tally up the votes. And again, for those of you who want Donald Trump to win, if he does win, are you going to say that it's rigged? Because a lot of you are probably saying that it's rigged now because Biden's in the lead. Well, what happens if that flips and Donald Trump wins? Is that going to say, well, it's rigged for Trump? So just please be consistent. Don't make yourself out to be a hypocrite. Many of you might not care because you're just concerned about winning, which again is one of the problems in this country, winning at any expense. The expense is the country. That's the moral, political, social, and economic decline. But I'm just pointing it out to you. Don't put yourself in the position to be a hypocrite. Let these people count the votes. Let the chips fall where they may. And have at it. And if there's legitimate cause for the president to request a recount, let it be done. If there's evidence of fraud or corruption or some shenanigans that's obviously illegal, take it to court. I have no problem with that. But don't come out here. Don't go on Twitter. Don't give speeches, make comments saying that it's rigged, saying that it's being stolen. Don't do it. Because it's destructive to this country, and it's only going to cause more division. And a lot of people listen to every word that the president says. They take it for gospel. And who knows what somebody's going to do. Okay? Because temperatures are high, and they need to be calmed down. But that's it for the circus. Initial jobless claims coming in at 751,000 for the prior week. It's still a heartbreaking and devastating number. Again, as we tried to discuss last week, to refresh everybody's memory, before these lockdowns and everything, initial claims were coming in around 200,000. So we're still 3.5 times where we were. What might be classified as normal, quote unquote normal, before the onset of the pandemic and all of these restrictions. So several months into this thing, and we still have 751,000 Americans filing for initial claims. So that's something to get to. We're going to get to the report too, but I want to get to the Fed's balance sheet and M2 money stock to get that out of the way. So on the asset side of the ledger for the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, $7,157 billion. This is an increase from the prior week of about, let's call it $13 billion, but still slightly below an all-time high, which we witnessed a couple weeks ago, back on the week of Wednesday, October 21st. That was at $7,177 billion. So we still got another $20 billion to go. But given the statements from the Federal Reserve, we're going to get there in no time. They're going to continue to do what is needed. M2 money stock, again hitting an all-time high, $18,838 billion. These numbers are just staggering. This is an increase from the prior week of about $23 billion. Again, you can find all of this on the Federal Reserve's website, Federal Reserve Economic Data. And just for a definition, per the Federal Reserve, M2 includes a broader set of financial assets held principally by households. It is also the broadest metric for money that the Federal Reserve now has. It used to be M3, but they got rid of M3 back during the great financial crisis with all of the quantitative easing shenanigans because, God forbid, they actually give us the truth. But M2 consists of M1 plus savings deposits, which include money market deposit accounts, small denomination time deposits of amounts less than 100,000, so a time deposit is a CD, and balances in retail money market mutual funds. Okay, again, $18.8 trillion. Back to initial claims, 751,000. The previous week's level was revised upward by 7,000 from 751,000 to 758. So coming in very closely over the past couple of weeks. Continuing claims for the week ending October 24th, because there is a lag, 7,285,000. This is a decrease of 538,000 from the prior week. Adding it all up, persons claiming UI benefits in all programs, regular state, federal employees, newly discharged veterans, pandemic unemployment assistance, pandemic emergency UC, extended benefits, additional benefits, work share, grand total 21.5 million. That is a decrease from the prior week of 1.1 million. So that's obviously in the direction we want to see, but still a heartbreaking and staggering number, 21.5 million. The bulk of the decline came from regular state unemployment, decreasing 602,000. And then also from the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, a decrease of some 992,000. Some of the biggest increases, however, were from the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, increasing some 277,000. And don't forget the grand total lags by a couple weeks, so that is going to be for the week ending October 17th. Now, of course, today is the first Friday of the month, so the official jobs report did come out. But since I was off yesterday, I'm not going to go through that. But we will do that over the weekend, probably on Sunday night if I had to guess. If not, we'll definitely get to it the following week. But that number was somewhat better than expected, adding 638,000 jobs in the month of October. And that was above market expectations of about 700,000. However, this is the smallest gain since the job market started to recover in May, so we're starting to see a little bit of a slowdown in that rate of change. And the outlook for the labor market remains challenging, of course, so we'll continue to keep you updated on that. But don't forget, when you're talking about 21.5 million, and let's just do the math, 21.5 million, let's just call it, divided by about 160 million in the workforce, you're still at 13%. So I think the jobs report number came out at about 6.9%, but we still have 21.5 million Americans collecting some form of unemployment insurance, which gives you a rate of about 13%. And then we know the shenanigans. A lot of people have been out of work for over a year, unfortunately, and they're just simply not counted at all. So it doesn't give the truest sense of the job market. There's a lot of part-time jobs out there because there's not a lot of full-time jobs out there. This is the economy of the living dead. When you have these zombie corporations out there, about 20%, it's just devastating to any type of future prosperity, because of the amount of debt that they have on their balance sheets, the amount of debt that they have to service. So any type of cash flow that they bring in through operations has to go to service that debt. And if that money is going to service that debt, it means that that money is not being used for research and development, or for hiring new employees, or investing in new plants and equipment, trying to increase productivity. It's not going to increase the wages of employees. It's not going to pay a dividend, or to increase a dividend, or to pay or issue a special dividend for shareholders. You get it? That's why debt is so destructive. And bring up the charts. You can, again, find them on the Federal Reserve's economic data website. Corporations now have more debt than they've pretty much ever had. So how do you think we're going to grow ourselves out of this? And you add that to our national debt and our deficits. When is this all going to end? It's not going to end pretty, I can tell you that. But there you have it. Election, jobs, and money. Oh my. Remain calm, remain patient. The big voter turnout, that's a good thing. We should be happy about that. Most of the time, people stay home. Most of the time, people don't vote. They're out there. They're voting. Some voted in person. Some voted by mail. Some states have the infrastructure to move quickly. Others do not. Just be patient. A lot of these people counting these votes, these are your neighbors. These are your fellow citizens. These people are volunteering or getting paid minimum wage. They're trying to do their civic duty. Let them do it. Let the chips fall where they may. And I hope that Joe Biden and President Trump are gracious. Gracious losers, gracious winners. Because the country has to come together. The temperature has to calm down. Because it's boiling over. So with that, enjoy your weekend. Again, I hope to be back on Sunday evening to go through the jobs report. But if not, you'll catch me back here next week. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.